Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Star Wars video, and this is going to be my kind of first impressions video on Star Wars The Force Awakens. I literally just back after seeing it now, so ready to talk about it a little bit. I'll probably be seeing it at least a few more times, and then I'll probably do like a kind of final thoughts video, or like I suppose a proper review video once I've seen it more, but for now, I'll stick to first impressions. I will be talking later on in the video about kind of spoilers from the movie and like the actual events of what happened. But I'll make it very clear at what point during the video I switch from being non-spoiler to actually talking about spoilers. So I'll have like a slide up to say when I'm like really making the transition properly. But for now, some brief non-spoiler thoughts. In general, I really liked the movie. I was very happy with how everything kind of played out, the general feel of the movie, how it looked, the way the characters were, the references back and forth between like this and the originals, and just it felt like a Star Wars movie, and that was definitely a success. It was pretty good overall. Um, I like most of the new characters. Some of them I was a little bit disappointed that like we didn't really get to see that much of. I liked the way they used the original cast. That was really well done. And I think that the thing is that a lot of people are freaking out about spoilers with this movie, and there are things to be spoiled. This is a movie that has a good few reveals throughout it, and it's definitely worth going into this movie being unspoiled on them, because you are going to get surprised a couple of times as the movie progresses with some of the stuff. So in that sense, it's a very eventful movie, and definitely like the cinema I was in was pretty shocked a couple of times throughout. So that's good there. Action, I really liked it. Again, maybe some of the lightsaber stuff, I feel they maybe could have made it a little bit better, but again, I feel like they're maybe saving the really really big lightsaber fights until like the next few movies. But uh, I can't really say too much like bad about that. If I had a negative, it would be that the overarching plot of this movie that isn't related fully to the characters, that being the, um, you know, basically the resistance, as it's called now, the rebellion, versus the Empire, which is now the First Order. That has some interesting aspects to it, just in regards to like the name changes for both factions and like the nature of what the galactic conflict is like now. But in terms of the actual like battle between these two factions that occurred in this movie, I was a little bit let down with how just similar it was to other movies. I'll talk about that more in the spoiler section of this video, but it was just like, okay, it works, but really you're doing that kind of again. But the character side of the plot, with regards to how that journey went, our various characters meeting up with each other, and the kind of adventure happening, was very well done, I think. And that's a huge success. As obviously for the most part known online, I suppose, as a Avatar Korra fan, this felt kind of Korra like in how it used the original cast, and that they were present. Some of them got more time than others, but they just used them effectively and didn't let them kind of overshadow that this was about the new characters primarily, and that they're gonna be the kind of new stars, and they're just kind of utilizing the other characters effectively as well. So, um, that's I think that's about all there really is to say non spoiler wise. Again, another slight negative would be, I suppose, some of the characters that are maybe fairly prevalent in the kind of marketing materials for this movie aren't really in the movie that much. I'm just kind of like, was there some scenes cut here, or what's going on here? It just seems like they overplayed what this character was meant to be. But again, I'll talk about that more in the next part of the video. So at this point, I'm going to transition into talking about spoilers. I'm going to just put a slide up in a couple of seconds here, and then when I come back after that slide, I'm going to be talking about spoilers. So if you don't leave before then, it's your own fault if you get spoiled on the movie. So here's the slide. Okay, so as for spoiler section of the video, um, as I said earlier on, this movie has a lot of reveals in it. There are moments that definitely can be spoiled for you, like just one sentence lines that can spoil parts of the movie for you, and there are a decent amount of them throughout the movie. I think probably the thing that will have most people talking coming out of the movie is the fact that Han Solo is killed in this movie, specifically by Kylo Ren, who in another reveal is revealed to be the son of Han and Leia, and his actual name is Ben Solo, I assume. Ben Organa, Ben Solo, whatever. Um, so yeah, there's a couple of reveals right there. Okay, that's Leia and Han had a son. Their son was trained to be a Jedi, and then like the other reveal is that he kind of fell to the dark side. He was trained by Luke with a bunch of other Jedi, but he basically wiped out the rest of them except Luke, and is now working for the First Order as their kind of, I suppose, kind of their Darth Vader figure. And then the other thing is just that Han and Leia are, they don't really establish what exactly their relationship is. Like, were they ever married? Or was it just that they had a kid together and at some point they kind of left to do their own thing? Leia is a general in this movie and she's very much focused on the resistance. Han, when we first meet him in the movie, is back to being a smuggler basically. He has this kind of massive smuggling ship that's smuggling stuff, and he seems to have lost the Falcon. Someone stole it from him, and it went through a series of being stolen and taken by other people, and then he finds it, obviously thanks to Rey and Finn. But it's interesting how they kind of do that, where all the other characters are at the original cast. Luke isn't revealed until the very, very end of the movie, last scene, though the whole character focused plot of the movie is kind of based around finding him, in terms of um, that's what BB-8 basically is for. Like he has in the first scene of the movie, basically, Poe goes to Jakku, one of the towns in Jakku, to get a piece of the map to find Luke from one of Leia's old friends, and that, along with later on in the movie R2D2 having the rest of the map, helps them to find Luke at the end, and Rey goes off on her own to find Luke. So, some just in terms of the plot, like there's some pretty interesting stuff going on there, character wise, for sure. Again, I'll actually give my thoughts on this stuff later on. I'm just kind of trying to just get it all out there so I remember everything. Obviously, Kylo Ren kills Han in a pretty powerful moment. It's like it's there's still a good bit of stuff that happens towards the end of the movie. Like it's not that this is very much towards the end. You're, I think there's about half an hour or so of the movie left when it happens, and so this stuff has to continue on without Han, and it's just powerfully done when it happens. And yeah, and then Rey, in terms of the whole parentage thing, they kind of set up that she is on Jakku as a scavenger, basically, waiting for her family to return. And we don't really get a reveal on exactly who her parents are, but at some point in the movie, I think what they're trying to go for here is that perhaps it's not incredibly important that we know who our parents are at this point, but that instead of waiting for her parents, she now has to kind of, I suppose, wait for someone else to return, that being Luke, and she kind of has to go on the journey to make that happen. That, like, he is who she needs to kind of focus her attentions on now, because she is the one who's ultimately revealed to be the kind of powerful, force sensitive, not Finn, as kind of a lot of the marketing material kind of made you believe, with the fact that he's always the one in the trailers and stuff like that to have the lightsaber. That's kind of just like a kind of hint throughout the movie that, like, you think that's going to be him, but for the most part the movie definitely sets it up that there's stuff about Rey that she's kind of holding back on, and definitely she's kind of more focused on, like, waiting for her family, and then it takes her being, like, kind of pushed into using the Force, and kind of, I suppose, fulfilling her destiny to really kind of take on the role, and I suppose properly search out Lucas is what happens at the end. Rey's arc in the movie is actually probably the best character stuff we see. Though what they do with Kylo Ren as a villain is, I think, equally as interesting. In that they're technically our main hero and main villain at this point in time, though they're perhaps setting Kylo Ren up for to be somewhat of a kind of potentially anti-hero at some point, but I don't think they'll maybe go that route. It seems like he's going to be in this movie. He's like complete villain for the most part, though. You could tell he's dealing with a lot of things and perhaps doesn't fully believe in the dark side. In that, with him, they actually play up the kind of reverse Luke thing where he's on the dark side and he feels like he's being pulled back to the light and he doesn't want to. That's interesting to me, in that like he was trained as a Jedi, and then obviously the influence of General Snoke, who I'll talk about in a minute, turned him to the dark side. He killed all the other Jedis in training, and that caused Luke to go into kind of hiding effectively because he felt he was responsible for all these people being killed, for I suppose effectively making the next kind of dark side user in Kylo Ren. Again, his actual name is Ben, and he just takes on this name himself and leads this group of knights called the Knights of Ren, which is something they mention at least once or twice, but they never really explain what it is, what the Knights of Ren are, or the significance of the name too much. It's just like, okay, that's his new name. So interesting, but there's definitely questions about him, and I assume, like, given where they leave off with Kylo Ren in this movie, Rey defeats him in their lightsaber duel, though he gets, like, cut a couple of times, and some fairly big cuts. He gets hit with Chewbacca's bowcaster at some point as well, so he gets pretty, like, I wouldn't say badly injured, but he gets a lot of kind of little injuries that leave him kind of badly injured, I suppose, in the end. And you know, he doesn't get any like limbs cut off or anything like that, like I was kind of expecting. No one does in the movie, really. Finn, in his duel with Kylo Ren, gets primarily you know, he gets kind of impaled through the shoulder, but it doesn't go fully through. It's just one of the side parts of Kylo's lightsaber. And then Finn also gets we don't know how serious it is, but he gets a full cut of the lightsaber kind of up his back, and that kind of takes him out of the rest of the movie effectively. And then we end the movie with him still unconscious as Rey leaves. So they're kind of vague about how serious his injuries are. Like it was definitely a kind of finishing blow in the fight, but it wasn't a full kind of like the way he kills Han Solo, like impaled straight through the stomach kind of thing. But we assume it's gonna take Finn some time to recover, and then he'll be back. And then Rey gets very minorly injured in the fight, but that's kind of the big hero kind of triumphant moment of the movie in many ways. Rey taking up the lightsaber and fighting back, kind of discovering how strong she is, and kind of overwhelming Kylo Ren. It's really interesting the way that they do that, and that they definitely hint towards that being the key, I suppose, hero antagonist relationship going forward, in that throughout the movie you're constantly aware that Kylo, I suppose, has the potential to go back to the light side, but him making the decision to kill Han when Han was kind of just wanting to help his son, because Leia, kind of when they finally do reunite in the movie, kind of when they start going on the final mission, she kind of tells Han, like, if you see her son, bring him back, and he kind of tries to fulfill that kind of wish that Leia had, but he kind of gets him killed in the end. So it's a powerful moment where just like Han is kind of saying that, like, you don't need the mask, you don't need this, come back and I can help you. And he's about to hand his lightsaber over to Han and kind of like try and fix things, but then the dark side kind of just takes over and he stabs Han. It's very well done, and again with Kylo, they constantly mentioned a couple of times throughout the movie that he's being manipulated by Supreme Leader Snoke, who is the leader of the First Order at this point in time, who seems to have some knowledge of the Force and obviously before the dark side, though we don't know if he himself is Force sensitive, how exactly he tempted Kylo Ren, how he first came into contact with Kylo Ren, or how any of that worked, how much training Kylo specifically has, because the if there's one inconsistency with regards to power in this movie, it's definitely with regards to Kylo and Rey and regards to how good they are with a lightsaber. Rey is established to be relatively skilled as a fighter on her own, and she's able to handle herself in a fight with her staff and stuff like that. But she at one point she just seems to connect to the Force and just completely overwhelm Kylo Ren, who is established to have been trained by Luke at some point, at least for a couple of years, be powerful enough to defeat all of the other Jedi that were in training with Luke, and potentially have, it's not said, but potentially have fought Luke at some point enough to where like he could escape or something like that. So, um, and then like the fact that Rey with no Jedi training whatsoever could overwhelm is interesting, though they do set it up that Rey seems to be able to very quickly grasp the basics of like Force powers and stuff like that. She kind of basically teaches herself Force suggestion during the movie, which is nicely done. Um, but again, like I definitely need to see the movie again to see the nature of Kylo Ren's injuries. But it seems like obviously he gets a blaster bolt from Chewie to the stomach just after he kills Han. Um, he get Finn during his fight with Finn. Finn gets a slight cut on his shoulder, but that's the only offense Finn really gets in that fight. Um, Rey kind of gets a kind of stab in the shoulder. It doesn't go fully through his shoulder. She like gets a fairly big cut on one of his legs, and then the finishing blow is somewhat of a cut across the face, in that it doesn't seem to be incredibly deep, but it's gonna leave a big scar on him. Like it goes across like from here up to here. Again, the scene when you see his face after the injury is quite dark, and combined with being in a dark theater, it was kind of, and I was fairly like far back, so it was kind of hard to make a defined detail of what exactly the injury was. But it didn't seem like he'd like lost an eye or anything like that. It's just like he now has a scar from Rey, and he's aware of how powerful the light side can be, and is kind of questioning things now. He thought he'd become even more powerful, going as far as to kill his father, but now he's been defeated by a complete novice, basically, who's extremely powerful. Now she's going to, we assume, get trained by Luke at the end, which, going to that final scene, is that R2D2, it's established that he's been in a low power mode since Luke went away, and he has the rest of the map. At some point, I suppose when they return back after the mission, he wakes up, he has the map except for the part BB-8 has, they link it all together, and then Rey with Chewie, basically that's the new kind of duo that owned the Millennium Falcon, because throughout the movie they had set up that Han kind of wants to pass it on to her because she seems to know mechanically how to work it best and has an appreciation for the ship, and Chewie seems to like her as well, so they do that. Chewie flies her to the place where Luke is, and I think they established that it's something like the first Jedi temple or something like that. Again, they never really go too far in regards to in depth in explaining the place locations where they are, but yeah, we go there, and basically what we get here is Rey. She's primarily, I think, going there to return Luke's lightsaber to him, his blue lightsaber that was lost in Empire, to him. And she basically ascends up these steps. It's really long steps up this kind of mountainous region of this island on this planet. And at the very top, Luke is kind of at the top, kind of in full cloak, looking out at the sea. We gradually turn around, we see it's him. He's wearing not dark robes like the last time we saw him. He's wearing more of a kind of Obi-Wan Kenobi type traditional kind of light Jedi robes. He turns around. Rey then takes out the lightsaber and just holds it towards him, and that's the final shot. Like they linger on it for like a good minute or two, of just Luke's reaction to Rey handing Luke back the his old lightsaber. He doesn't say anything, and that's just how it ends. There's a lot of shots as like Rey is kind of, you can tell she's kind of overwhelmed and overcome with emotion at finding Luke and being the one to return this to him, and I suppose potentially for her the start of the rest of her life, that we assume she's going to be trained by Luke, though we don't really know what his character is like at this point in time. He's obviously going to find out about the death of Han. We assume he potentially knows about it just through waves in the Force when it happened, and so being caught up with things and wanting to train Rey, it sets it up that like Luke's back in play now. Han may have died in this movie, but Luke is back in play now, and that's what you want to go see Episode 8 for, to see Luke talk. What is Luke like as a character at this point in time? Where's Rey going? Is she going to become this really powerful Jedi? It's really interesting. With regards to the three new characters, our kind of new trio, Finn, Poe, and Rey. As far as I'm aware, Poe and Rey never actually meet in the movie. They don't never say a word to each other. There's a few times in the movie where they could potentially have met off screen, but we never get confirmation that they have met. Finn separately meets Poe and then separately meets Rey, in that Poe is obviously in the first scene of the movie getting the piece of the map to Luke, and then the First Order arrive, and Finn is one of the stormtroopers in this attack. Poe is captured, and then Finn helps Poe escape back down to Jakku, so that's where they form their friendship. But during the crash landing, Finn assumes Poe is dead and goes off on his own, at which point he separately meets Rey, all the time thinking Poe is dead and kind of taking on his role as kind of, I'm part of the rebellion, I'm part of the resistance type thing. And so it's interesting then, like you do get this kind of powerful moment when the two of them realize that the other two is alive, and and then with regards to Finn and Rey's relationship, it's interesting in that there is a slight hint of romance between the two of them, but for the most part, I think it's just kind of deep friendship that really forms between them here, and it's going to be interesting when Finn does wake up and finds that kind of Rey's gone off on her own, and when they actually do meet up and stuff like that, what this kind of trio is like together. But at the very least, what it's done is it's put Finn in this position where he's now with people he believes in and stuff like that. He isn't initially like killing for the First Order, who he really believes are like evil. He's with people who trust him and care for him and stuff like that. So I assume if going forward, Rey will kind of be more off on her own with Luke, and will then, I suppose, come to meet up with the rest of them. Whereas the more main character friendship that will get developed will probably be between Finn and Poe. Poe is set up as the best pilot in the Resistance very early on, and just this kind of hero character. He's the person, kind of Leia's go-to guy in terms of like, she needs anything done, she goes to him. He's pretty high up in the rebellion, that he leads the attack. He's the leader of the squadron of X-Wings that he is a part of, and stuff like that. And I don't think he's not in the movie that much, because like between the crash landing and his return, most of the movie goes by before he's actually involved, and the majority of his scenes are him just leading attacks on the Starkiller base, which in itself is this would be my negative with the movie, is that the main plot of First Order versus Resistance is Starkiller base, which is like the size of the Death Star times like 100 or something like that. It's huge. It's basically a a whole planet that is like they're a little bit vague on this, but like it's a whole planet built kind of next to a sun that harnesses the power of the sun into a massive weapon that is kind of like tens of times more powerful than the Death Star's weapon. In that there's a scene where we see one blast split off into like five and destroy a bunch of moons on a planet. Like each blast is capable of destroying a planet. It's that dangerous. And then the movie at the end comes down to effectively a rehash of A New Hope scene where like the Death Star is gonna fire in X many minutes. We need to destroy it quick. Here's the weakness. Here's a little trench run with the X-wings and stuff like that. So that would be my one negative, in that they really overdid that. That like, oh, super weapon on the villain side. Let's have a desperate attack in the final moments, targeting the weakness to take it down. Like that's now like 3 Star Wars movies where that has been the kind of final battle, and I'm just like, okay, for the first of the new trilogy, I can accept that, but please now move on and cover more interesting things. And for me, the most interesting thing about the First Order is Snoke himself, who we see only through hologram for like the entire movie, and he seems huge. But again, it's just a hologram. It could be just he could be relatively small overall, but he has knowledge of the dark side. He is overall in control of the First Order, and that he orders General Hux around and Kylo Ren, and just seems in general interested in the ways of the Force and stopping the Resistance getting back to with Luke Skywalker. Again, they don't cover him anything more than that, but I'm fascinated to see how in-depth in the dark side he is. Like, is he some old Sith Lord of old, or is he just a person who knows about the Force? Like another character in this movie, Maz Kanata, who is kind of the one responsible for getting Luke's old lightsaber into the hands of our heroes, as well as, I suppose, more prompting Rey onto her road to becoming a Jedi, I suppose. She's interesting that they established that she's like 1,000 years old, which is older than Yoda. Which interesting. Final thing to talk about. Captain Phasma is in the movie for like 2 scenes. She doesn't do anything of note action wise, and has like 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, and potentially doesn't survive the movie. I'm not really sure on that. Like literally we see her like one scene, her ordering around some stormtroopers. It's clear that she's the stormtrooper commander, captain. And then when like Han and so on, that they attack Starkiller Base, they basically find her and take her prisoner, and I think put her in like a trash compactor or something like that, and that's the last we see of her in the movie. Biggest letdown of a character who was set up to be quite like the kind of the Boba Fett of this trilogy. Again, there's potential for her to come back in the next movie and the following one, but wow, not very impressed with her in this movie. But they're my early thoughts. Again, I may be misremembering some of these scenes, but in general, I like the reveals. I like the characters. I like the kind of character focused plot, but the whole basically Empire Rebellion kind of battle that actually happened here, I think that was the least inspired aspect of the movie. Music, actually, I should probably mention this. I for the most part thought it was good. I probably need to get the soundtrack at some point and like really listen into the music itself. I think the only thing for me that was lacking with the music is that I don't think it had that one extremely memorable piece of music, like Duel of the Fates, like Battle of the Heroes from the prequels and stuff like that. It didn't quite have that. Rey's theme kind of comes close, but it's so much a character theme that it doesn't quite kind of come out of the movie thinking like, oh, Force Awakens, I'll always remember that piece of music. So, music good, but missing that really good thing. But in general, really happy with this movie. I can't wait to see it again. So, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.